Trailer number 2 has been released for Star Wars Rebels Season 4, and there is a ton of very interesting things in the trailer. I'm gonna break it down. Let's do this. What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. Guys, if you're a huge Star Wars fan, subscribe to this channel. Gonna be covering a ton of Star Wars as we head towards Rebels and as we head towards The Last Jedi. Oh, and you might want to enable notifications because YouTube is weird and it's not telling you when we upload our videos. But getting right into this, they released the second trailer for Star Wars Rebels, and it's a doozy. It's got a ton of very interesting things in there, and I wanted to do a breakdown of what I thought were the most important things focused on in the trailer. So right away, the trailer starts with Ezra saying some kind of a hymn or a poem about the Lothcat rat, the Lothcat cat, the Lothcat wolf, choose a path, and it is done, or everything is done. And the thing that's weird about that was that ominous, dark voice that repeated what he was saying that seemed to come from the Lothcat, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I think they're implying, or at least teasing, that the dark side is not done with Ezra, but this whole wolf thing itself. Now look, the meta commentary on this is that Dave Filoni loves wolves. Everybody knows this. He's a huge fan of wolves. If you see the guy, he usually has wolves on his hat. He's got wolves on his t-shirts. He's got wolves everywhere. He loves wolves, okay? So that's obvious. He's wanted to put wolves into the show for a long time. Ezra also has that awesome connection where he can communicate to animals. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're doing with this. Now, Filoni also said that that's not Ahsoka. A lot of people thought that Ahsoka might be anthropomorphied into a wolf, or maybe she changed her essence or became a force ghost of sorts into a wolf. Dave pretty much said that that wasn't happening. So what I think is really happening here is it's sort of a metaphor for Ezra, right? Because I think that choosing a path is exactly what he is going to have to do by the end of this show. The wolf, and the idea of the wolf, I really believe is this metaphor for Mandalore, and not just Mandalore, but like the warriors, the warrior race, as opposed to the Jedi, who were really peacekeepers and more like, sentinels, and they weren't really warring. The Mandalores, and perhaps even Knights of Ren and things like that, are militant factions. They're militant, okay? And I think that Ezra, at the end of the day, is going to have a realization, whether for good or for bad, that he's militant. He cannot fight the way the Jedi fight. He has to go do his own thing. And I think that it's going to refer to the pack as the Mandalorians. And I think he's going to have to go find that path. I don't think he's a Jedi. I don't think he's going to be able to hang out with the crew. I think he's going to go back to Mandalore with Sabine. And I think that that is kind of his journey. But I'll get to that at the very end of the video because I want to talk about my expectations for the ending of Rebels. But moving right along, the next theme that is heavily focused on in the trailer is Mon Mothma versus Saw Gerrera. Now, this is really cool because it, of course, ties us into Rogue One a little bit, but it also sort of fills out what exactly is going on with people that are against the Empire, because not everybody who's against the Empire is a part of the rebellion. The cause to overthrow the rebellion is a shared idea by many, but just like they say in Rogue One, Saw Gerrera is an extremist, maybe even a terrorist, right? And so I think that what they're trying to do here is, differentiate between the political side of things and how you do things arguably the right way, and how you do them the wrong way with militancy, a lack of empathy, and a lot of destruction. So I think they're definitely trying to show that there's a bad part of the rebellion. Even the people that are in the official rebellion, there's a bad part for them. But also, there's just really bad parts of the militancy and Saw Gerrera's little cell units and different things like that. Personally, I love it because I think that are both very valid and interesting sides of the rebellion. But that's definitely something that they focus on there, okay? So I think that this is going to be a theme really focused on in the show. Now, right after this sort of thing, Ezra says, what about Lothal? This is something I promised my people. And I think that's going to be a big thing too. You see at least Ezra and Sabine doing something on Lothal, going and trying to do something to help the people of Lothal out. I think that's going to be very interesting because we know it's not a major victory. And they're not taking like ships, right? It's not the Rebel Alliance. The Rebel Alliance's first victory was on Scarif. At the base over Scarif, they had their first victory. That's a big freaking deal. So it's not going to happen on Lothal, but that doesn't mean that Sabine and Ezra can't go there and do something, you know, really, really good for the people of Lothal. That could be very, very interesting. There's also mention of Krennic and his Project Stardust, which I think is obviously the Death Star. And by calling it Stardust, which was the name that Galen gave his daughter Jyn Erso, that's her nickname. So obviously Galen is involved. And what I think is really interesting is Saw Gerrera and Galen have a history. So maybe some rumors, you know, some speculation, something said about Saw, maybe even a meetup or some communication between them. That would be pretty dang interesting. Once again, just billing out the lore and kind of tying it to Rogue One. And that really is the crux of this season. We saw the Ghost in Rogue One. We saw Chopper. The question is, how much of the crew survived? How much of the crew was there at the battle? And what is their function within the Rebel Alliance? This is very interesting, and I think we're going to see it. I mean, you literally see them on Yavin meeting with all the members of that council, and it's going to be super directly tied to Rogue One, like literally tied right to Rogue One. I think the very end of Season 4 might be the people of Rebels, the characters, splitting up, going their separate ways, several of them literally on the way to the Battle of Scarif, or at least to Yavin 4. So that's pretty interesting. Also, I found it pretty cool that they focused on the love story. They're really focusing on Hera and Kanan's love story. Now, my gut tells me this is because they're gonna fridge Kanan, and I hate that. But it actually makes a lot of sense. He's had a pretty completed arc, and depending on what happens in this season, a very satisfying arc. So I think that's the route they're gonna go. And the last part of the trailer is them literally talking about how all the paths are converging, and Kanan saying, I just don't know if we'll like where they lead to. And that's pretty fair. I think this is what's going to happen, guys. Rebels is a huge show for Disney and a huge show for Star Wars fans. I didn't really understand the impact of this show or how big it was until I was at Star Wars Celebration Orlando. It makes up probably at least a third of the fandom. And what I mean by that is that at least a third of the fandom consider Rebels, not the comics, not the movies, not any other television show, Rebels, to be its main dish, its entree of Star Wars canon. That's real talk. Like, it's huge. I couldn't believe the amount of energy, cosplay, t-shirts, you know, merchandise. Just people love that show, and I'm one of them. I love this show. I think it's fantastic what they did with this show, and it's super sad to see them go. But if what Dave did in Clone Wars is any kind of roadmap for what he might do with this show, he's not just going to stop those character stories, but their story of being together, I think, is the thing that is going to end. So, will we lose some people? Yes, and I'm calling it right now. It's probably Kanan. Now, they're playing up that whole battle between Kanan and Ezra as far as the dark side is concerned. I really don't think that we're going to get that. I don't think that's going to happen, and I would absolutely hate if that's the way Kanan went out. I think he's going to do a sacrifice to save General Syndulla, because I think Hera is going to be captured by Rook and taken to Thrawn. But overall, the way I think this series will end is we'll have personal resolutions for the characters. I think Sabine and Ezra are going to go to Mandalore, and they're going to figure that out and help get rid of the Empire on Mandalore and liberate the Mandalorians and maybe go make a baby named Rey. But they're going to go do that. I think that Kanan will probably die. I think that Zeb might be with Hera, and then that would be the crew. It would be Zeb, Hera, and Chopper basically at the Battle of Scarif. So that's kind of the way I see it going down, but they're not all going to die. I think that you could see them meet up later in comics, in movies, perhaps the next shows that Dave's working on. That could all be really, really cool. But that's just my breakdown of the themes I saw play out in the trailer. I also think it's pretty interesting that they talk about Mandalore. I think we'll get some Mandalorian stuff early on, but I think that we're going to have to move away from Mandalore to go to Lothal, to go figure out Lothal, to go figure out what we're doing on Yavin, to tie these things together, to focus on the militancy and Saw Gerrera. So that's kind of interesting, but those are the themes. Let me know, what do you guys think? Did you think the trailer was awesome? Do you think I'm kind of spot on with these themes? Did I miss something? Let me know. Happy to have a conversation with you guys about this in the comment section. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and nerdy day. See ya!